My stepdaughter asked me to walk her down the aisle since her real dad was too sick to come, and that's when I saw her father in the front row. Rewind to 6 months earlier. Bryn called me at work around 3 p.m., which was unusual. She was 23, finishing her master's degree in environmental science, and we'd always had this unspoken understanding that I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I married her mom when Bryn was 14, right after her parents' divorce got finalized. Her biological father, Derek, lived 2 hours away in a suburb outside the city and saw her every other weekend until college made schedules complicated. Then it became holidays and the occasional lunch when he was passing through. "Can we talk about the wedding?" she asked, her voice tight. I assumed she needed help with the budget or wanted my opinion on the venue her mom had been pushing. Instead, she said, "I want you to walk me down the aisle." Silence. Complete silence. I could hear my own heartbeat. "What about your dad?" I finally managed. "He's my father," she said carefully, like she'd rehearsed this. "But you're my dad." She explained how Derek had always showed up for the scheduled visits, but never for the moments in between. When she had her appendix out at 15, I was the one who slept in that awful hospital chair for 3 nights straight. When she got accepted to grad school at Northwestern, I helped her move into her tiny apartment and assembled furniture until 2 a.m. Derek sent congratulations cards with checks inside and made appearances at major events, but I'd been there for the daily stuff. The chemistry homework that made her cry, the devastating breakups, the middle-of-the-night panic attacks about choosing the wrong career path. "I need to tell him," she said, "but I wanted you to know first." 3 weeks later, Derek called me. His voice was cold, measured. "You've been trying to erase me from her life for 9 years. "That's not what this is," I said, gripping my phone tighter. "She's my daughter. I've known her since she was born. You're just the guy who married her mother." He wasn't wrong, technically. I hadn't been there for her first steps or her first day of kindergarten. But I'd also been the one teaching her to drive in that empty parking lot, spending hours helping her pick a college major, talking her through every nerve-wracking job interview. I'd never asked to replace him. I'd just shown up consistently. A month before the wedding, Bryn came over looking stressed. "Dad called again. He's saying he won't come if you're walking me down the aisle." "Then I won't do it," I said immediately. She looked at me like I'd just spoken another language. "What?" "He's right. He's your father. I don't want to cause problems." Bryn started crying, which she almost never did. "Do you know how many times I waited by the window for him to pick me up and he'd cancel last minute? How many dance recitals he missed because something came up? He's making this about him, just like he always does." 2 weeks before the wedding, Derek texted Bryn that he'd developed a serious heart condition and couldn't handle the stress of attending. She should have her stepdad walk her down the aisle since that's clearly what she wanted anyway. He'd recover at home, and maybe they could get coffee afterward if his health improved. Bryn showed me the message with shaking hands. "He's lying. I called his girlfriend. She said he's fine. He's just punishing me." Wedding day arrived. I stood in the small room at the back of the church, adjusting my tie for the 5th time. Bryn looked beautiful in her dress. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being here, for everything." The music started. We walked toward the doors. That's when I saw him. Derek sat in the front row, 3rd seat from the aisle. No heart condition, no hospital bed. He wore a dark suit and watched us with an expression I couldn't read. Bryn's grip on my arm tightened. Her breathing changed. The doors opened and every head turned toward us, but she'd frozen completely. Her fiancé Holden stood at the altar, smiling, completely unaware. "Do you want to stop?" I whispered. She didn't answer. Derek slowly stood up. The entire church fell silent. He took 1 step into the aisle, blocking our path. Then he looked directly at me and said the 6 words that changed everything. "I need to talk to her." My wife stood up from the front row, her face pale. "Derek, don't do this. Stay out of this, Natalie," he said, not taking his eyes off Bryn. "This is between me and my daughter." The wedding coordinator appeared from somewhere, looking panicked. The organist had stopped playing. 200 guests sat frozen, watching this unfold like a car accident. "You lied to me," Bryn said quietly. Her voice was steady, but I could feel her trembling. "You said you were sick." "I was testing you," Derek replied. "I needed to know if you'd still want me here." "Testing me? On my wedding day?" "You replaced me," he said, his voice rising. "After everything I've done for you. All the money I spent on your education, all those years of child support." "You mean the legally required child support?" Bryn interrupted. "The bare minimum?" My wife moved toward them, but I shook my head slightly. "This needed to happen. Maybe it should have happened years ago." "I was there for you," Derek continued. "I came to your graduations. I sent you to summer camp. I bought you your first car." "You came to my high school graduation an hour late and left before the reception," Bryn said. Her voice was getting stronger. "You sent me to camp 3 times because it was cheaper than paying for childcare during your weekends. And you bought me a car for my 16th birthday, then took it back 4 months later when you got mad at Mom about something." I'd forgotten about the car. She'd been devastated. "That's not how I remember it," Derek said. "Of course it's not. You remember the version where you're the victim." Bryn let go of my arm and took a step forward. "Do you know what I remember? I remember being 10 years old, sitting on the porch with my overnight bag, waiting for you to pick me up. You were 3 hours late. When you finally showed up, you acted like I was being unreasonable for crying. I apologized for that." "No, you didn't. You told me I was too sensitive." She was crying now, but her voice stayed firm. "I remember being 12 and having my science fair presentation on a Saturday. You promised you'd come. I kept looking at the door, thinking you'd walk in any second. You never showed up. You didn't even call. And when I asked you about it the next week, you said you'd gotten confused about the date. I had work. You were at a golf tournament. Mom showed me the photos you posted on Facebook. Derek's face reddened. Several guests were shifting uncomfortably. Holden had stepped down from the altar and was standing uncertainly, clearly unsure if he should intervene. I remember being 15, Bryn continued. I called you crying because this boy at school started a rumor about me. I needed my dad. You said you'd call me back in an hour. You didn't call for 3 days. When you finally did, you'd forgotten why I'd called in the first place. Bryn, I'm not finished. Her hands were shaking, but she kept going. I remember being 17 and getting into Northwestern, my dream school. You took me out to dinner to celebrate. You spent the entire meal on your phone, taking work calls. When the waiter asked if we were celebrating anything special, you said, just dinner. You'd already forgotten. My wife was crying openly now. I put my hand on Bryn's shoulder, letting her know I was there. And I remember being 21, Bryn said, her voice breaking. I called you at 2 a.m., having a panic attack because I'd just been assaulted at a party. Do you remember what you said? Derek's face went white. You said, can we talk about this tomorrow? I have an early meeting. Gasps rippled through the church. My wife covered her mouth. You called me back 4 days later, Bryn whispered. 4 days. By then, I'd already filed a police report with Mom. I'd already gone to the hospital. I'd already started therapy. You asked if I was feeling better, like I'd had the flu. I didn't know it was that serious, Derek said weakly. I told you I'd been assaulted. What part of that didn't sound serious? Silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. But do you know what I remember most? Bryn asked. I remember being 14 years old and this man, she gestured to me, this man who barely knew me, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. Just coffee. No agenda, no scheduled visit, no obligation. We sat in that diner for 3 hours while I talked about my favorite bands and my friends and stupid teenage drama. And he listened. Actually, listened. He remembered the names of my friends. The next week, he asked how things went with that chemistry test I'd mentioned. He remembered. Derek looked at me with pure hatred. That's when I realized something, Bryn continued. Being a father isn't about biology. It's not about showing up to the big events when it's convenient. It's about being there for the small moments, the boring ones, the scary ones, the 2 a.m. phone calls, the hospital chairs, the chemistry homework, the driving lessons, the middle of the night panic attacks about choosing a career. She turned to me. You showed up, every single time. You never promised to be my father. You just loved me anyway. I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it was closing. Bryn looked back at Derek. So yes, I asked him to walk me down the aisle. Because he earned it. Not through blood or checks or scheduled visits. He earned it by being there. I'm still your father, Derek said, but his voice had lost its edge. Are you? Bryn asked. Because I have a man who held my hair back when I had food poisoning, who helped me build my resume, who taught me how to change a tire, who stayed up with me when I couldn't sleep before my thesis defense, who cried harder than I did when my cat died. That's a father. What you are is the man who contributed DNA. The silence stretched out. Holden slowly walked down the aisle and stood beside Bryn. He didn't say anything, just took her hand. Derek looked around at all the faces staring at him. I drove 4 hours to be here. No one asked you to come, Bryn said quietly. You texted me that you were too sick. You made that choice. And honestly, I was relieved. Because I knew if you showed up, you'd find a way to make this day about you. Just like you're doing right now. This is my daughter's wedding. Then act like a guest, my wife snapped. Sit down and let her have her day. For once in your life, stop making everything about your ego. Derek stared at her, then at Bryn, then at me. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To turn her against me. I never said a word against you, I replied. Not once in 9 years. Every time Bryn was upset because you canceled or forgot or didn't show up, I bit my tongue. Every time she cried herself to sleep waiting for you to call back, I stayed quiet. I never tried to replace you. I just tried to be there for her. You should have tried harder to make her respect me. Respect is earned, I said, not demanded. Derek looked at Bryn one more time. If I sit down, will you still let me stay? Bryn hesitated. Holden squeezed her hand. It's your choice, he whispered. You can stay, she finally said. But if you cause any more drama, security will escort you out. Mom already arranged that. My wife nodded. She'd actually arranged it 2 weeks ago, anticipating something like this. Derek slowly returned to his seat. The church remained silent. The wedding coordinator looked at Bryn with a question in her eyes. Bryn took a deep breath. She straightened her dress, wiped her eyes, and linked her arm back through mine. Sorry for the delay, she announced to the room. Let's try this again. A few nervous laughs rippled through the guests. The organist fumbled for a second, then started the wedding march again. We walked down the aisle. This time, Bryn held her head high. When we reached Holden, she hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, but mostly for just now, for letting me say what I needed to say. Always, I whispered back. I gave her hand to Holden and took my seat next to my wife, who was still crying. She gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. The ceremony proceeded. The officiant, clearly rattled, stumbled through his opening remarks, but recovered. Bryn and Holden exchanged vows they'd written themselves. She talked about finding someone who showed up consistently, who made her feel safe, who listened. Holden talked about falling in love with someone who knew her own worth, who demanded respect, who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. I glanced at Derek once. He sat rigid, staring straight ahead. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," the church erupted in applause. Bryn and Holden kissed, then walked back down the aisle together, beaming. Relief flooded through me. We'd made it. At the reception, Derek sat alone at a table near the back. Most guests avoided him after the church scene. My wife's sister Angela tried to make conversation with him once, but he barely responded. He just sat there, nursing the same drink for an hour. During the father-daughter dance, I stood on the floor with Bryn while Unforgettable played. She rested her head on my shoulder. I meant everything I said in there, she murmured. I know. Are you mad that I made a scene? Are you kidding? You were magnificent. She laughed. Mom said you'd say that. We swayed in silence for a moment. Then she asked, do you think he'll ever understand? Honestly, probably not. Some people are too caught up in their own narrative to see anyone else's truth. That makes me sad. I know, but you can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. She pulled back to look at me. Where'd you learn that? Your mother. She's full of wisdom. She really is. The song ended. Bryn hugged me again, then went to dance with Holden's father, as planned. I returned to my table where my wife immediately grabbed my hand again. That was beautiful, she said. I didn't do anything. You did everything. For 9 years, you showed her what a real father looks like. That speech she gave, every word was because of you. I just loved her. Exactly. An hour later, Derek stood up and headed for the exit. Bryn was on the dance floor, laughing with her bridesmaids. She didn't see him leave. My wife did, though. Should someone? No, I said. Let him go. He walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. Not to Bryn, not to the groom, not to any of the guests. He just left. The reception continued without missing a beat. Bryn gave a speech thanking everyone for coming, specifically mentioning the people who'd helped with wedding planning. She thanked my wife for teaching her about unconditional love. She thanked Holden's parents for welcoming her into their family. She thanked her bridesmaids for keeping her sane during the planning process. She thanked me last. To my dad, she said, raising her glass. Everyone turned to look at me. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about being present. It's about choosing to love someone even when you don't have to. You chose me when you married my mom. And every day since then, you've kept choosing me. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. The room erupted in applause. I couldn't see clearly anymore because my eyes were blurry. My wife leaned over and kissed my cheek. See? You did everything. The rest of the reception was perfect. Bryn and Holden cut the cake without smashing it in each other's faces, which my wife had begged them not to do. They did their last dance. They thanked everyone again and headed out to their car, which Holden's groomsmen had decorated with streamers and cans. As they drove away, my wife and I stood in the parking lot, waving. We did it, she said. We did. Think Derek will reach out? Eventually, when he's ready to make it about him again. She laughed. You're probably right. We drove home in comfortable silence. The house felt too quiet after all the noise and activity of the day. I loosened my tie and collapsed on the couch. My wife sat beside me. You okay? Yeah, just processing. It was a lot. It was. I paused. Do you think I overstepped? Being okay with Bryn calling me out in front of everyone? Are you serious? You gave her permission to speak her truth. That's exactly what she needed. Derek's going to hate me forever now. Derek already hated you. At least now Bryn has closure. 3 days later, Derek called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. We need to talk, he said. No greeting, no preamble. Okay, Bryn won't return my calls. Can you blame her? Silence. Then, I just wanted to be part of her wedding. You were invited. You chose to lie about being sick. Then you showed up unannounced and made a scene. I needed to know if she actually wanted me there. That's manipulative, Derek. How would you know? You've never had a child of your own. The words hung there, sharp and cutting. I'd heard variations of this before, usually from Derek when he felt threatened. You're right, I said calmly. I've never had a biological child. But I've been raising your daughter for 9 years, loving her, supporting her, being there when she needs someone. If that doesn't count, then I don't know what does. It's not the same. Maybe not to you, but to Bryn, it matters more than biology ever did. She's turning against me because you poisoned her. I never said a word against you, I interrupted. Not one. Every time you disappointed her, I was there to pick up the pieces. I never told her you were a bad father. I never competed with you, I just loved her. If she's upset with you, it's because of your own actions. Not mine. More silence. What do you want from me? Derek finally asked. Nothing. This call was your idea. I want to fix things with Bryn, then call her. Apologize, not for showing up at the wedding, but for everything that led to that moment. Apologize for the missed visits, the forgotten promises, the times you weren't there when she needed you. Actually take responsibility. I did my best. Did you, though? Or did you do the minimum and expect maximum credit? He hung up. I wasn't surprised. My wife had been listening from the kitchen doorway. That went well. He's not going to change. Probably not. But at least you tried. 2 weeks later, Bryn and Holden returned from their honeymoon in Greece. They came over for dinner, glowing and relaxed. Bryn had gotten tan and Holden had a sunburn across his nose. Over pasta, Bryn mentioned Derek had sent her a text. Just one line. I'm sorry you felt hurt. A non-apology apology, my wife said, rolling her eyes. Classic, Bryn agreed. I didn't respond. Are you going to? Maybe eventually, when I'm ready. But right now, I'm focusing on the people who actually show up for me. She smiled at me across the table. We talked about their honeymoon instead. The beaches, the food, the ancient ruins. Holden told a story about getting lost in Athens, and Bryn supplemented it with details he'd forgotten. They were good together. The kind of partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. After they left, my wife and I cleaned up together. She washed. I dried. You've been quiet, she said, just thinking. About Derek? About everything. About how I never expected to be a father figure. I married you because I loved you. Bryn was part of the package, sure, but I didn't know if she'd accept me. I certainly didn't know we'd end up here. Here? With her calling me dad. With her choosing me to walk her down the aisle. with Derek hating me for doing what he should have done himself. My wife turned off the water and faced me. You know what I think? What? I think you became exactly the kind of father Bryn needed because you weren't trying to be her father. You were just trying to be kind, to show up, to care, and that made all the difference. I just did what felt right. That's my point. It felt right because you're a good man, not because you were trying to prove something or compete with Derek. You just loved her. Simple as that. Simple as that, I repeated. 6 months after the wedding, Bryn announced she was pregnant. My wife screamed so loud I thought something was wrong. When she finally calmed down enough to explain, I found myself crying too. I was going to be a grandfather. We want you to be very involved, Bryn said. Both of you. This baby is going to need good role models. Have you told Derek? My wife asked carefully. Bryn's smile dimmed slightly. Not yet. I'm not sure how to. He's been texting me occasionally, asking how I'm doing, but it's all surface level. He never addresses what happened at the wedding, just acts like it never occurred. That sounds like Derek, I said. Part of me wants him to know his grandchild, Bryn admitted, but a bigger part of me remembers being that kid waiting for him to show up. I don't want my child to feel that disappointment. You don't have to decide anything right now, my wife said gently. Focus on being healthy and happy. The rest will figure itself out. But it didn't figure itself out, at least not easily. When Bryn finally told Derek about the pregnancy, he reacted exactly as expected. He was thrilled. He wanted to be involved. He promised to do better this time around. He'd learned from his mistakes. He'd be the grandfather his grandchild deserved. Bryn wanted to believe him. I could see it in her eyes when she told us about his reaction. She wanted to think he'd changed, that becoming a grandfather would somehow unlock the father she'd always wanted him to be. Just be careful, I said. Don't set yourself up for disappointment. I know, but what if he's serious this time? Then he'll prove it through his actions, not his words. 3 months into the pregnancy, Derek had attended exactly one doctor's appointment. He'd promised to come to several others, but always had last-minute work conflicts. He'd said he was planning the baby shower, but never followed through, leaving my wife to organize everything. He'd committed to taking a grandfather parenting class with me, but canceled 3 times. Bryn wasn't surprised. She was disappointed, but not surprised. I don't know why I expected anything different, she said one night over dinner. She was 6 months pregnant now, starting to show. Because you wanted him to step up, my wife said. There's nothing wrong with that hope, but it's exhausting. Every time I let myself believe he'll change, he proves me wrong. Then stop giving him chances to disappoint you, I suggested. Not forever, just for now. Focus on the people who are showing up. Bryn looked around the table. My wife had made her favorite soup. Holden was rubbing her swollen feet. I'd already assembled the crib we'd bought that afternoon. You're right, she said quietly. I have everything I need right here. When the baby arrived 3 months later, Derek was out of town on business. He'd known the due date for months. He'd promised to be there. But when Bryn went into labor a week early, he was at a conference in Seattle. He sent a text. Congratulations. Can't wait to meet them. I'll fly back this weekend. He didn't fly back that weekend. Or the next. Work kept coming up. Flights were expensive. He was dealing with some personal stuff. Always an excuse. I was there in the delivery room, though, along with my wife and Holden's parents. I held Bryn's hand during contractions. I counted through her breathing. When they placed that tiny, screaming baby girl in Bryn's arms, I cried harder than I had at the wedding. They named her Claire. Middle name? The nurse asked. Bryn looked at me. Grace. Claire Grace. My mother's name was Grace. She died when I was 25. Bryn had never met her, but I'd told her stories. Bryn remembered. Derek met Claire when she was 3 weeks old. He showed up with expensive gifts and 1,000 apologies. Bryn let him hold his granddaughter, but I could see the wall she'd built. She was polite but distant. She didn't invite him to stay for lunch. She didn't ask when he'd visit again. She just let him meet Claire and then showed him to the door. After he left, she handed Claire to me. You're her grandfather, she said firmly. Not him. You. The man who shows up. The man who held my hand through labor. The man who loves me without conditions. That's what I want her to know. What about Derek? He can be in her life if he wants, but he has to earn it. Just like any relationship. Derek didn't earn it. He visited Claire twice in her first year. Both times with expensive gifts and grand promises to do better. Both times he disappeared again within weeks. By the time Claire turned 2, Bryn had stopped reaching out entirely. Derek would text occasionally, asking for photos. Bryn would send them without comment. He'd react with a heart emoji and disappear for another month. Do you regret cutting him out? I asked her once. I didn't cut him out. He cut himself out. I just stopped begging him to be present. Fair point. Besides, Claire has you. She has a grandfather who reads her stories and plays with her and shows up when we need help. She doesn't need someone who treats her like an obligation. Claire's 3rd birthday party was at our house. My wife and I had turned the backyard into a princess wonderland. Pink streamers, a bounce house, more balloons than any child could count. 20 kids running around screaming. It was chaos and joy and everything a birthday party should be. Derek didn't come. He'd said he would, but his new girlfriend had planned a surprise trip that weekend. He sent a gift card and an apology text. Claire didn't notice. She was too busy playing with her friends and eating cake. When it was time to open presents, she sat in my lap and I helped her tear through the wrapping paper. A new bike from us, books from Holden's parents, toys from her little friends. Best birthday ever, Grandpa? She asked, her face covered in chocolate frosting. Best birthday ever, I agreed. That night, after everyone had left and Claire was asleep upstairs, Bryn found me cleaning up the backyard. You don't have to do that, she said. Holden and I will get it tomorrow. I don't mind. She started gathering plates anyway, working beside me in comfortable silence. He didn't show up, she finally said. Not a question, a statement. No, I told myself I didn't care, but I did, just a little. That's okay. Is it though? When do I stop caring if he shows up? When you're ready, there's no timeline for that. She dropped a stack of plates in the trash bag. You know what the worst part is? Claire doesn't even know to miss him. He's been so absent from her life that she doesn't realize anything's wrong. To her, this is normal. You're her grandfather. Derek's just some guy who sends presents sometimes. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Part of me is relieved she won't feel the disappointment I felt, but another part of me is sad that she'll never know what it's like to have two involved grandfathers. She has one very involved grandfather. Sometimes that's enough. Bryn hugged me, still holding the trash bag. It's more than enough. You're more than enough. 5 years passed like that. Derek remained a peripheral figure in Claire's life. He'd surface every few months with gifts and promises, then vanish again. Claire knew him as Daddy's other daddy, which Bryn had explained was technically accurate but felt hollow. She wasn't mean about Derek. She just didn't build him up into something he wasn't. Meanwhile, I was there for everything. I taught Claire to ride the bike we'd given her. I went to every preschool performance, even the one where she forgot all her lines and cried. I built blanket forts and had tea parties and read the same bedtime story 17 nights in a row because that's what she wanted. When Claire was 6, she asked Bryn a question that changed everything. Why doesn't my other grandpa come around much? Bryn had been dreading this conversation. She'd prepared herself for years, but no amount of preparation made it easier. He loves you, she said carefully. He's just very busy with work. Busier than Grandpa? Grandpa makes time even when he's busy. Claire thought about this. So he doesn't love me as much as Grandpa does? That's not... Bryn stopped, because honestly, what could she say? That Derek loved Claire in his own way? That his version of love just looked different? Those were comforting lies parents told to protect their children. But Bryn had built her relationship with Claire on honesty. Love is shown through actions, Bryn said instead. Grandpa shows his love by being here, by spending time with you, by showing up when you need him. Your other grandfather shows love differently. By sending presents? Sometimes. I'd rather have Grandpa. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That conversation prompted a call from Derek a week later. Bryn had mentioned Claire's question in passing during one of their rare phone calls, and Derek had gotten defensive. You're turning my own granddaughter against me, he accused. I'm being honest with her, Bryn replied calmly. She asked why you don't visit. I didn't know what to say except the truth. The truth? You mean your version of it? My version is based on facts. You've seen Claire maybe 10 times in 6 years. You've never attended a school event. You've never come to a birthday party. You've never spent more than an hour with her at once. I have work. Everyone has work, Bryn interrupted. But some people prioritize their family anyway. Like your precious stepdad? Yes, like him. He's been more of a grandfather to Claire than you've ever tried to be. He's not blood. Neither is love, apparently. Derek hung up. Bryn wasn't surprised. That Christmas, Derek showed up unannounced. Not at Bryn's house, at ours. My wife answered the door and found him standing there with wrapped presents and a determined expression. I want to see Claire, he said. She's not here. She's at home with Bryn and Holden. I know. I wanted to talk to you two first. My wife let him in, more out of shock than hospitality. I came downstairs to find Derek sitting awkwardly on our couch. What's this about? I asked. I want to be more involved in Claire's life, he said. But Bryn won't let me. That's not true, my wife said sharply. Bryn's never stopped you from seeing Claire. You just never make the effort. I'm trying now. You've been trying for 6 years, I pointed out. The trying isn't the problem. The follow-through is. Derek looked at me with something between anger and desperation. She listens to you. If you told her to give me more chances, no. I'm not going to pressure Bryn to give you access to her child when you've proven repeatedly that you can't be relied on. She's my granddaughter. Then act like it. Show up to her school events. Come to her birthday party. Video call her between visits. Be present, Derek. Actually be present. Don't just show up when it's convenient and expect everyone to celebrate your bare minimum effort. You've never liked me. This isn't about liking you. This is about protecting Claire from the same disappointment Bryn experienced her entire childhood. Derek stood up. I knew coming here was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, my wife said. But if you're serious about being in Claire's life, you need to prove it through consistent action. Not grand gestures, not expensive gifts. Just show up, regularly, reliably. Like him? Derek gestured at me. Yes, like him. Derek left without taking the presents. They sat on our couch for 3 days before I finally called Bryn and asked what to do with them. Donate them, she said tiredly. I don't want them in my house. He seemed genuine about wanting to try. He always seems genuine, until he disappears again. I donated the presents to a children's hospital. I never told Derek. 2 years later, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. Stage 2, caught early, good prognosis. But it was still cancer, still terrifying, still life-altering. Bryn was there immediately. She drove us to appointments, researched treatment options, set up a meal train with our friends. 8-year-old Claire made get-well cards that covered our refrigerator. Derek sent a fruit basket and a thinking of you text. During my wife's surgery, I sat in the waiting room with Bryn and Claire. Holden had stayed home with their newborn son, William. Claire colored in a princess book while Bryn held my hand. She's going to be okay, Bryn said. I know, but you're scared anyway. Terrified. Claire looked up. Is Grandma dying? No, sweetheart, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The doctors are helping her get better, like when I had my tonsils out. Sort of like that. She went back to her coloring, satisfied. Children have this beautiful ability to accept reassurance at face value. The surgery took 4 hours. When the doctor finally came out, I stood so fast I knocked over my coffee. It spilled across the floor, but I didn't care. She did great, the doctor said, smiling. We got clear margins. She'll need chemo as a precaution, but her prognosis is excellent. I couldn't speak. Bryn hugged me while I sobbed into her shoulder. See, she whispered, she's going to be okay. My wife's chemo treatments were brutal. She lost her hair, lost weight, lost energy. Some days she couldn't get out of bed, but she fought through it with a determination that amazed me. Bryn was there for every treatment. She'd drive an hour each way to sit with us in the infusion center. Sometimes she brought Claire, who would read her grandmother stories. Sometimes she came alone and we'd just sit together in exhausted silence. Derek called once to ask how treatment was going. Once in 6 months. When I told Bryn, she just shook her head. Some people only show up for the good times, she said. The rest of us show up for everything. My wife finished chemo in spring. Her hair started growing back, soft and silver. She gained weight, got her energy back. By summer, her doctors declared her cancer-free. We celebrated with a huge backyard party. Everyone who'd supported us through the ordeal was there. Bryn and Holden brought both kids, my wife's sisters, our friends, neighbors who'd dropped off meals. It was loud and joyful and exactly what we needed. Derek didn't come. Bryn hadn't invited him. I only wanted people who actually showed up, she explained when I asked about it. People who earned their place in our lives. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? For what? Missing Mom's cancer treatment? Or missing my entire childhood? There's a lot to forgive. All of it. She considered this. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean giving him access. It just means letting go of the anger. I'm working on that part. When Claire turned 10, she asked if she could stop seeing Derek altogether. The visits had become even more sporadic, maybe twice a year if that. Each time, Derek would arrive with elaborate gifts and big promises, then disappear again. He makes me uncomfortable, Claire admitted. He asks me questions like he's taking a test. What grade are you in? What's your favorite subject? Like he's supposed to know but doesn't. Because he doesn't know, Bryn said quietly. Grandpa knows everything about me. Grandpa's been there for everything. So why do I have to keep seeing someone who's basically a stranger? Bryn called Derek that night. Claire doesn't want to visit anymore. What did you tell her? Nothing. She decided on her own. Because you've poisoned her against me for years. I've done nothing except be honest. You're a stranger to her, Derek. You show up twice a year, spend an hour asking surface-level questions, then disappear. She's old enough now to recognize that's not a real relationship. She's my granddaughter, and you're welcome to build a relationship with her. But it has to be real. Consistent visits, regular phone calls, actual engagement. If you want to be in her life, you have to earn that place. I shouldn't have to earn a relationship with my own grandchild. But you do, because biology isn't enough. It never was. Derek didn't call again after that, and Claire never asked about him. When Claire was 12, she had to do a school project about someone who influenced her life. She chose me. Why? I asked when she told me. Because you taught me what it means to show up, she said simply. She interviewed me for hours, asking about my childhood, my career, how I met her grandmother. She asked about my decision to marry someone with a teenage daughter. Were you scared? She wanted to know. Terrified. Why'd you do it anyway? Because I loved your grandmother, and I thought maybe I could be helpful to your mom, even if I couldn't replace her father. But you did replace him. I didn't replace him. I just showed up when he didn't. Her final project was a poster board covered in photos. Me teaching Bryn to drive. Me at her graduation. Me at her wedding. Me holding newborn Claire. Me at every one of Claire's birthday parties. Me teaching her to ride a bike. Me at her soccer games. At the bottom, in careful handwriting, my grandpa taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. Every single time. She got an A. Now, here we are, 15 years after that wedding. Bryn is 38, thriving in her environmental science career. Holden still looks at her like she hung the moon. Claire's a freshman in high school, confident and kind. William's 10, obsessed with dinosaurs. My wife beat cancer and has been in remission for 7 years. Derek's around somewhere, still sending occasional gifts, still making empty promises, still confused about why his daughter and grandchildren don't prioritize him. Last week, Bryn called me. Claire has a big presentation tomorrow. Can you come? Of course. Derek texted asking about it. I told him the time and place. Will he show up? Probably not, but at least she'll have you there. I went to Claire's presentation. She spoke about climate change and environmental policy with passion and intelligence. Afterward, she found me in the crowd and hugged me. Thanks for coming, Grandpa. Always. Derek didn't show up. Claire didn't seem to notice. Because here's what I've learned in 15 years of being a father figure, a grandfather, a constant presence. Showing up matters more than biology. Consistency matters more than grand gestures. Love is a verb, not a noun. And family is something you build through daily choices, not something you're owed because of shared DNA. Derek taught me that by being the opposite example. And Bryn taught me that love doesn't require a blood connection. It just requires presence. The choice to show up again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I married my wife because I loved her. I became Bryn's dad because I showed up. I became Claire and William's grandfather the same way, not through promises or intentions, through presence, and that made all the difference.